Welcome to Grief Healing for Moms. I am so excited to have you guys here. And first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this podcast. My name is Fabiana Batista, and I am a happy mom. I am a happy mom after the death of my 4-month-old son. And I am here to tell my story, my grief and healing journey, and to give some tools that worked for me to be able to reach happiness again. I went from being completely broken to being in the darkest part of my life, having the devil lurking, questioning God on why is this happening to me, to now being in the happiest and the most peaceful time of my life. I am closest to God as I've ever been. My marriage is stronger than before the loss. And in the midst of it all, my husband and I managed to start a business, which is FLULESS Wellness, and which is now a business that is thriving. This didn't happen overnight, but it is possible. My journey through loss inspired me to create this podcast, which is dedicated to moms to help them navigate the deep sorrow of loss. It is meant to allow them to find hope again and discover tools to embrace joy again. Now, every episode, I will interview a different mom that has a unique situation. It could be the loss of a 17-year-old or a miscarriage, or they're just gonna share different stories so that if my story doesn't resonate with you, that is okay. There's gonna be other moms that hopefully you can connect with and learn from them and see that through their journey, hopefully there's something that you can learn for yourself and implement for yourself to still reach that happy place. That is ultimately our goal here. So having said that, we are introducing my first guest is none other than my better half, my husband, Daniel Batista. Woo! The incredible.
That's right. I first of all, I want to say once again, thank you so much for all of the viewers in the audience that are here to just listen to our story. I want to say how proud it is that I am of my wife to be able to have the courage to do this. I know she's been wanting to do this for a long time, and sometimes it seems like God gives us the right moments and the right time to prepare ourselves properly. And I know now that you are stronger than ever, and you have this incredible message to put out there, not only of our story itself, but opening the door to other women to be able to share what it is that made them successful, and how it is that their own version of what to do when they're in that deep, dark moment. I think it's incredible to put this information out there so other women, other families would be able to have the happiness that we have. It does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of teamwork. Definitely 100%. This is all on God. And if you are able to open yourself up and realize that happiness is God's greatest gift to us, then you should deserve. No, you shouldn't be happy. You deserve to be happy. You're supposed to be happy. And our mission here today with Grief Healing for Moms is to do exactly that, to bring women that have been through a loss, give them the hope to be able to be happy again so they can continue being moms for surviving sons. If they've lost their first child, so they can be happy for a new family that they're going to be able to make. One way or the other, it's just putting ourselves out there, giving ourselves, giving God all of the credit in all of this, and giving back to the community so that they could be as happy as we are. So super proud of you, and I think it's amazing that you're putting this together. And thank you so much for having me here. And once again, thank you so much to the audience for your time.
Thank you, honey.
Let's get this started.
So today we're gonna share our story of our baby's passing. We are gonna talk about our grief and loss journey. We're gonna talk about our healing journey. And at the end, we're gonna give some tools and tips that have worked for us to reach happiness. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so before we get started into the actual story, what would you like our viewers to get out of us sharing our story today?
The truth, I want people to end up exactly in the same exact position that I'm in right now. I really do feel like I'm one of the happiest people in the world. I've been through a lot, but with that, I'm empowered. And I look forward to the future knowing that because I've been through so much, things are going to end up being easier. So, what I want is to make a connection with the viewer, for people that have been through a loss, through a family, even more so to that father figure in the same exact situation. I want to make sure that you leave with the information that is going to help you, help the love of your life end up being in a happier place. I think, as a man, we do have our role in keeping all of it together.
And we're gonna get into that.
We're definitely going to get into that
part.
and how it is that my perspective of the whole thing was. But yeah, I really do want people to be able to reach true happiness. And I say that from the perspective of an incredibly happy person that is in an incredible relationship, a closer bond with God, the best times that I've ever had with us in our relationship. I love my children dearly, and every day is now a blessing that we look forward to. I think it's incredible. That's what I want the viewers to get.
All right, so let's get into Dex's story. Dex was our baby. He passed away at 4 months old.
Okay.
But
You want me to
let's
tell
go
the
from the
story so you don't
beginning.
get all,
Yes,
all
because
shook
I
up?
still get choked up when I say the story, hence why I needed some backup.
Now, since this is a healing journey, we do also want to implement, for me, for us, I think telling my story, telling the story of Dex, made it a lot easier for it to be real for us. When these things first happen, I think that you're in a state of confusion. You're lost. You're questioning, is this real? You wake up one morning, everything is perfectly fine. You have almost going to be 2-year-old son and a 4-month-old baby. God is incredible.
At the time, we had our son Davin was
Gonna turn 2 years
18
old.
months. No, he was 18 months when Dex was born.
Oh, when he was born. Yes, I was going back straight
I
to.
was staying home I was on maternity at the time. I was staying home because the baby was born. At 4, when he turned 4 months, then he started going to the same daycare. Dex started going to the same daycare that Davin was in. And so it was close to my job at the time. I dropped him off. I went to work. And then that afternoon, I got a phone call from the daycare, from one of the teachers saying, you have to come over here right now. And she's yelling on the phone. I'm trying to understand what's going on. And I'm like, what is happening? What's going on? And she's like, your son isn't breathing. And I'm like, wait, what? Which one? I have 2 there. And she's like, the baby, just hurry up and get over here. So I run to my car. I grab my bag, run to my car. And as I'm driving, that's when I called you.
Yeah, so I have I would expect her worst phone call in her life was that one. I end up having the other worst phone call in my life. I get a phone call from my wife who is going nuts, screaming, telling me that the baby isn't waking up. The baby isn't waking up. Now, a little tiny bit of background history on me. Before this, I've been in the emergency system, in the emergency medical system for quite a while now. I was a paramedic, I was an ER nurse, I was a firefighter. So I've dealt with plenty of emergencies, and I'm blessed to say that I think very clearly in almost any situation because I've been in a lot of emergencies. So my wife calls me, she's screaming at me, telling me the baby isn't waking up, the baby isn't waking up. I question, that doesn't sound right. Is he not waking up or is he not breathing? She's like, no, he's not breathing. Well, I very calmly tell her, well, listen, I need you to go to the school. When you get there, understand they're not going to let you in. There's probably going to be a police officer there. Whatever it is that happens, do not get into the rescue. And my mind already starts trying to figure out how it is that I can protect my wife, because I know that if she gets into a rescue and she sees all of what's going on inside of that rescue, that's going to end up traumatizing for a real long time. So I begged her, do not get into the rescue. I will meet you at the hospital.
They didn't let me anyway.
They didn't let you, but we have to make sure that we take care of you and make sure that, there's no reason for you to see all of that being an emergency room nurse, I've been there, I've done that. And unfortunately, I've been through the loss of a few babies. So my eyes have been through this situation. My brain has been there before, so I'm able to think clearly. And I tell my wife, "Hey, I'm gonna meet you at the hospital." So
So I'm driving to the school, and that's when as I was driving to the school, I remember there was so much traffic because it was already 4 o'clock when they called, or 4:30. So of course, typical Miami traffic. I'm driving, wanting to fly, and I'm stuck in traffic. So at that point, you're kind of trying to keep me calm because you're telling me if you get into a car accident, you're never gonna get to the school. So I'm trying to get there. Finally, arrive at the daycare, and there's cops everywhere. There's and then it's a big ambulance right in the front. I just leave the car in the middle of the street. I'm running up, and then two cop women actually were the ones, and it was this lady, and I wish that I could tell her thank you because I still remember what she looks like. I don't know her name though, but that cop woman, she was an older cop. She just looked at me, and she grabbed me, and she hugged me, and she said, "You have to stay calm." But she was almost like half breaking down. Like you can see her eyes were watering, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is like I just want to see him." And I kept saying, "Just let me see him." She was like, "He's already in the rescue. Let them work. They're gonna do everything they can. Let them work." And I just kept asking, "But is he breathing? Is he okay? Is he okay?" And she just wouldn't. She wasn't able to tell me. Like she's like, "I don't know, honey," and she just gave me a hug. Sorry.
So, story continues. We end up at the
They're
emergency room.
rushing. Yeah, they rush us to the emergency.
They rush us to the emergency room. And I mean, not to get into every single detail because the mission of this podcast is to give you guys the secrets of what it is that made us happy. Well, point being,
It's still a sad story.
It's an
and
incredibly
that's okay.
sad story.
You know, this part is sad. We're gonna finish on a happy note, but it is still okay to process the sadness of it. Is still, when you think back about something sad, it's still gonna make you sad, you know. But
Absolutely.
Word.
So it not that it hurts less every time, you just understand the situation more every time. And the more you accept that God knows exactly what it is that he's doing, and that he's never going to give you anything that you can't handle. If you understand and you live that reality, then you'll definitely end up being a happy person. I end up getting to the hospital before anybody gets there. My mind starts going off thinking, what are the next steps? Once again, I'm blessed to be able to have firefighter training. So my mind starts going on to what is going to end up happening next. What is going on here has already happened. So I see that they bring Dex in, they're working him. When I took one look at him, I already had that gut feeling of, it is what it is. This exactly went to my head. I said, oh shit, Dex is dead. This is real. So my mind already made the decision right there of, this is bad. This is not going to be good. So while most people will be thinking about what's going on in the ER, my mind is thinking, where is this going to end? Is he going to end up coming right back to us perfectly fine? Or are we going to end up with a child that is brain dead, that is never going to be able to smile? This is going to take a huge toll on my family. I'll do one shift, she's gonna do another shift, my mom was gonna do, and these are the things that are actually running through my head while they're doing CPR on my child. Then God comes into the picture. I start praying. I ask God to please give me my son back because I am a good person. I never questioned God as to why it is that this is happening, but I did reach out and I said, I'm a good person, just give me my son back. And as I kept on asking to give me my son back, I kindly made the realization of the reason why it is that I was here. And I realized we are never going to end up having a quote unquote perfect child, healthy, beautiful baby that we're going to end up enjoying life with. We're going to watch him grow up, ride bike, first day of school. Everything. I knew at that moment I'm not going to end up having that. So I decided to make the decision of we are going to stop them from doing CPR.
And during the whole thing, I mean, this went on for
I can't recall exactly how long this went on for.
it was going on for a while because at some point,
to me, time is a blur in all of that. I just remember the parts of it.
Well, I feel like they were working him for a while because he was a baby, and the whole time I was just praying, like in my heart, I was like, no, he's gonna come back. Like God is good, and I kept praying, God, please, like bring him back, please bring him back. Like I hadn't accepted what was really going on, but in the whole thing, because you had so much experience working in the ER, I remember asking you, I was like, are they doing everything? Are they doing that right? And I was looking, we were sitting in front of the room, the curtains were closed, but I kept telling you, go in there, make sure they're doing everything right. Please go in there and look. Are they doing everything right? Are they giving him the thing? Is everything going the way it's supposed to? And you would peek in there and you would look and you would tell me, yes, they're doing everything to the T. So that I do remember. So that's why when you said the next part, I was like, I had full trust in your capabilities and your knowledge as a nurse, as a registered nurse.
So as all of this is going on, I made my decision. I realized that we're not gonna get him back. He's not gonna be what it is that I signed up for. I say this, I know sometimes my wife gets upset with it when I say it, but it's the truth. Nobody asks for a respirator at a baby shower. Nobody asks for that. That's not what you sign up for. It's not what you think you're gonna have, and it's not what I wanted for my life. So
it's not what we wanted for him, especially.
And it's definitely not what we wanted for him. So I can easily say the best decision I've ever made in my life was the decision that I made right there bedside at that hospital, and I decided we're gonna stop. So I realized it was almost an aha moment from God. The reason why it is that I was there, the reason I was there was to stop the situation and to end what was going on with them trying to resuscitate Dex. I know a mother, it would be extremely difficult to find a mother that had the courage to see through everything that was going on and realize a loss is a loss. And I made my decision, and the second that I made my decision, this was me by myself. She wasn't even involved in this decision. In my head, I said, all right, I'm gonna tell her that we're gonna go in there and we're gonna stop this. And the second that I made that decision, if you do not believe that there is a battle between good and evil, that there is a devil and there is God, I promise to you, the second that I made the decision to end what was going on, what God put me there for, we got a heartbeat back. The devil showed up.
That's right.
The devil showed up.
And everybody inside, there must have been like 20 people inside that little room working him. And everybody started yelling. They were all cheering, like, yeah. And I remember somebody going, shh, shh, shh. Somebody inside there going, shh, like saying, almost like telling them, don't do that because you're going to give false hope to the parents. And the reason for the heartbeat was, can you explain it?
So I know that science can bring a heartbeat back, and with the amount of epinephrine,
right?
with the amount of epinephrine that they were giving him, I mean, if you're giving up epinephrine to a tree, it's gonna get up and it's gonna run. That's how it's just how it goes. So
it wasn't a real heartbeat.
Science could end up making that happen, and I had already made the decision. But
it wasn't a real heartbeat.
Well, I'm getting there. So I already had made my decision. I already knew that God had put me there for that reason, and the decision was made. And the second that I saw that heartbeat, I knew that's not real.
Yeah, I remember you turned around and you said, you whispered and you said, it's not real.
All excited. The second that they got a heartbeat back, she got excited. She looked up at me and she was like, babe. And I looked at my wife and I told her, that's not real. And she had this face of confusion of, what are you talking about? And I said, science can do that all day long. That is not real.
And I remember you had told me stories from the ER about similar situations with adults. So that's why when you said that, I was like, oh, that's right. This is what could happen with the medication. So it's not a real heartbeat, meaning that he's not really alive. That's just pushing medications, which is what making the heartbeat. But a few minutes after that.
So
He stopped.
I second that Fabiana got real excited, I told her, hey, listen, that's not real. We can actually do that all day long. That heart is gonna stop, it's gonna keep going, it's gonna stop, it's gonna keep going, and this is never gonna end. I told her, I looked her in the eye and I said, this is a decision. And I mean, before I even say it, this is the part where I want, if there are men watching this, this is the part where you realize that as a man, your job is to serve your wife and figure out how to keep her happy after a situation like this. God has put you in your wife's, in your girlfriend's, in your baby mama's life. He's put you there to protect her. And it is your job as a man to follow through and figure out how to protect your wife and do everything that you can to be able to make her happy again. And that's exactly what I told her. I told her, hey, that's not real. That heartbeat is not real. We can do that all day long. I told her, the decision that we're making right now is on me. This falls on my shoulders for the rest of our lives. This is not your decision. And she's like, what? She said, what are you talking about? I said, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna stop this. And she had this face of like, what the hell are you talking about? And I said, this is on me. I said, for the rest of our life, I will figure out how to make you happy. I will figure this out.
No, and you also explained.
We are going to walk in there and we're going to tell them to stop, and this is over.
But you also explained the why. Like, he
Yeah,
was never going to be healthy. It was, at that point, he had been not breathing for such a long time that it could have caused like brain damage. It could have caused a whole
absolutely.
other. So the way he
Dex was
explained it
down
in the
for
moment. So essentially, he
30
went in there,
minutes
they
he was
called
probably
not
without oxygen in his brain. So
no, more than that, because from the time that this happened at the daycare, so it was probably maybe an hour and a half, maybe an hour. So nonetheless, so
from that moment on, it has been my job, my blessing, to make sure that my family is protected and that my wife is happy.
So
from right there,
because
the journey begins of the downfall.
Yeah.
The reality of
we got in. We were able to go in at that point. Everybody stopped working him. People cleared out the room. We got to hold him for a few minutes. And got to hold his body. And he looked like he was sleeping. So it still hadn't registered. They pull us aside to a different room where, like, a waiting area for the paperwork to be processed. And in that room is where, like Danny was saying, there's a true battle of spiritual war for our souls. And right there and then, even though I was crying, I was broken, I was still trying to process the whole thing. And we were there together. It was just the two of us. And that's when I told you, I said, I don't know how we're going to make it through this, but I am not going to the dark place that I was in when my dad passed, which my dad had passed a few years before that. And during that loss, it was a very dark time. I went into a very dark hole. I was very angry at God. So it was a completely different experience. But during this, I was like, I don't know how and I said to you, I don't know how we're gonna get through this, but I'm not going back to that dark hole. And I think that was the first step of, all right, I'm completely broken. I don't know how we're gonna do this, but I know we're gonna get through it somehow. And then that's where, from there we had to go home, pick up Davin, let him know what had happened to his brother, and it was a whole thing. But what do you think what was your lowest point? And then I'll say what my lowest point was. And what was your lowest point, and what was the thing that that helped you get out of that darkest point?
I think I can clearly remember the lowest point that I got. I think it was the day after. I think for some reason I was looking out the window, and I broke down. It was extremely, it was like a stabbing pain that just hit me. I guess that was my quote unquote reality of, dude, this is real. I broke down probably, I don't think I've ever cried that hard in my life that it actually hurt. But that lasted for about 2, maybe 3 minutes. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm a normal person. I process things completely different. All people say you're supposed to look at the glass half full or half empty. My joke in life has always been, who do you think drank the first half? Like, I always give every single scenario the upper hand. I try to look at the positive of everything.
You're a very positive
I'm an
person as it is.
extremely positive person. And I realized at that low point, I mean, I remember that I crumbled. I fell to the floor. I was in the fetal position crying.
I remember
And
that.
then it was almost like a sudden stop, and the reality of what happened to us that is special. What happened to us that is special? And the reality of it is, Dex died of SIDS. Dex died of sudden infant death syndrome. There's children that die every single day from the same exact thing. I mean, for life to happen, it has to be a miracle. For a baby to be able to sleep and swallow and breathe at the same exact time, it is a miracle. So for some reason, something happened there, and God didn't want us to have this.
Well, I feel like
Well, actually, God gave us the blessing of having this child for 4 months. Let me say that the right way. It wasn't that God didn't want us to have him. God just said, I want you to have him for 4 months, and I'm going to take him back because he's mine. So at the moment that I was on the floor, I'm not sure who it is that had taught me this, but I asked myself, what is going to make me special? Is this making me special? Being on the floor crying broken? Or am I gonna have to realize that what's gonna make me special is how I'm gonna handle this coming out of this?
so not the actual problem, but
Not
how you
the problem.
how you
I
face the
focused on
solution.
the solution. I did not focus on the problem because the problem already had happened. And I understand that if all I do is, if we concentrate on the loss, then all we're gonna end up having is negativity. Sometimes God takes things out of your life to be able to open the doors for bigger and better things. And it sounds so cliche, but we are living testimony of this.
And I know that we keep mentioning God and this whole thing, but it wasn't always like that. So
No.
back then when that happened, we were, we believed in God, but we were not going to church. We were not going to any service. We believed in God and we were close to God and we would pray, but it was very casual, I want to say. The reason why we keep mentioning God now is because looking back, there were so many things that happened where there were so many miracles.
There was
so many
there was
miracles.
no explanation for
because
how
there's no
exactly
other-
things were supposed to
there's
work
no
out.
other there's no other explanation than miracles. There were so many miracles that happened during that time and even to this day that it's the reason why we got so much closer to God. And we'll mention those because I think that's a beautiful experience and a beautiful miracles that happened. So my lowest point was actually a couple of days later. Davin was still with us in the house. People had already, like a lot of people showed up at first. People were already like, nobody was home that day. You had taken Davin out to the park to get him out of the house for a little bit. And I was in the closet, in the walk-in closet. And I remember feeling so broken, like so completely broken that I just stood there and I was trying to pick an outfit and I'm just looking at my clothes, like just daydreaming. And I just looked up and I said, God, I started to cry. I was just so sad because everything was sinking in that this was real. Dex was dead. And I just looked up and I said, God, please, I don't know how I'm supposed to make it through this, but please help me. And as I'm crying and I'm praying and I'm just saying this, I'm just talking to God. And I felt a warmth. And that's why I'm saying it's a miracle, because there's nothing else. A warmth in my heart. And as I'm crying with my eyes closed and I feel this warmth, I kind of just stopped and I looked down to see if somebody was around, like if somebody was touching me. I was like, I'm here by myself. And I look down, I don't see any. I look around, there was nobody there. I was still in the closet by myself. But I still felt the warmth. And I just stood and I didn't move because I didn't want that feeling to go away. So I just stayed frozen. And then the peace came. And I felt peace. And I didn't understand how I can feel peace when my 4-month-old had just died, but I did. And that is why the only thing that could be is it's God saying, I'm with you, lean on me. My love is here for you. Lean on me, that I'm gonna make sure you're okay at the end of all of this. And ever since that point, it was just one thing after another that I would pray. I would just tell him, God, please help me. I'm having a really hard time. I don't know if I can make it through this today. And something would happen. Like a couple of days later, it was 3 days later, actually, our son Davin was turning 2 years old.
So wait, before you go, I want to make sure that the viewers understand. So what are you saying is one of the tools that helped you the most is not only having faith in God, but also looking for the signs of things that are put in your path to make sure that you have happy moments. Because it's normal for you to feel sad.
It all starts with, I think it all starts with leaning on God and seeking God, because it doesn't just happen. Seek God. Ask God to help you. Ask for that help. Ask for that guidance. Ask for that healing.
Oh, I'll take it further than that.
And then watch what comes next, because some things will start happening that you're like, there it is. There'll be like little signs, like little crumbs guiding you and telling you, I heard. It's like his way of saying, God's way of saying, I hear you. I'm here with you. I'm carrying you through this dark time.
I'll take it even further than that. If you don't seek God, somebody else will find you.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody else will find you.
For sure.
And how do we know that this is a reality? Because there are people that have gone through the same exact scenario. And there's some people that are extremely happy. And there's other people that will never find happiness in their life again. People that are in a deep, dark hole. And it doesn't matter how many family members, friends, shower them with love. They will never, ever end up being in a happy place because they haven't accepted the true source of happiness in life.
And seek them.
So
a few days later, it was 3 days later, it was Davin's birthday. We had been teaching him how to blow a candle for a little while, practicing. And this is a boy that's turning 2 years old. He didn't know the difference. And he had taken a nap. No, because I really like the story. He had taken a nap that day, and I kept thinking, how am I going to do a birthday for him? How are we gonna celebrate him turning 2 when our 4-month-old just died? I don't think I have it in me. So he takes a nap.
This was literally 3 days later.
3 days after Dex's passing.
Is my other son's 2-year-old birthday.
So I go in his room to wake him up, and I'm sitting in his bed, and he has his pacifier on. And as I'm waking him up, he tells me, he mumbles something, and I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? I'm like, what? And he's like, nah, flying. I'm like, what? I'm like, take off so I take off his pacifier, and at this point, Davin was talking fully. And he gets upset because I keep asking him, what are you saying? I can't understand you. He takes off his pacifier and he goes, Dex is flying. And he points up. And I just bawled. I just started crying because I was like, I was like, what? He's like, flying, Dex. And he's pointing to the corner of the room. And then and that's one of those signs that I'm talking about. Those are one of those signs that God gives you so that you could be a little bit better and have a little bit more peace and have a little bit of healing coming your way. And I started crying and I just looked up and I said, thank you. I got it. And then we got up, we got him dressed, and that was what I needed to be able to have a little cake for my son for his second birthday and blow his candle happily like he had been trying to, and celebrate him, because it's not his fault that his sibling had just died. So I love that story because I feel like it's you can't make stuff like that up. It comes from a 2-year-old, you know.
Part of the healing journey is being able to see the things that are still going around you that are there to make you happy, and be able to absorb it as these things are here to make you happy. I think if I were to give any type of advice to a husband that is in the same exact position, first of all, if I can give you a hug, I definitely would give you a hug. You're not by yourself.
It's a tough position.
It's a tough position. It's one that we were never going to be prepared for, but at the same time, you are so blessed to be that person. Number one, my advice to a man that is in the same position is, first of all, understand our role. From the beginning, I knew I am a father. I am not a mother. I understand. For me, the relationship with my son pretty much started when I got to hold him in our hands. I don't know if other fathers are going to agree with me, but that whole talking to the baby in your belly, that's to make you happy. Because, oh my God, it's so cute. He's talking to the belly. Listen, our relationship started when I got to hold you. The relationship between you and Dex started the second that he was created. So I know that my relationship with my son is not the same exact one that I had with my wife. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be cold. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be less broken. It does not mean that I didn't love him as much. It means I am going to be open to understanding that she is going to be broken or have moments of being broken for the rest of her life. It doesn't matter that we had him when we were 35, 36 years old. When we are 80, she will end up crying thinking about Dex.
I still do.
And that is my opportunity to hold her and let her know everything is going to be okay, and to reassure her that the day that I said, for better or for worse, for death to us part, I'm going to be here through the thick and thin. I'm going to be there for her. So your job as a man is to love your wife even more and understand that this is an opportunity to be able to get even closer to each other.
And I think something that you told me, because at that time, which and I love that you're giving advice to the husbands, because our guests, my guests are going to be, for the most part, women. Yeah. So something you told me right after his passing, I told you, and I said to you, I don't, sometimes I'm going to cry a lot. Like, I don't know if I can stop crying. And you actually said, it's okay. Cry whenever you need to cry. I'll just hold you. Instead of, you weren't trying to tell me something to fix me or tell me, oh, don't cry, it's fine. You weren't annoyed at me crying. You were just so understanding that I just needed to cry. I needed that reset. And that was everything. Because then it made me feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, I just need to cry, which it's so necessary. I think as women, we try to be so strong and we try to be tough and we try to hold all of this hurt in because it's weak if we cry. And that's so wrong. That's not like that at all. On the contrary, crying is so important because it's a reset. We need that reset. We need to cry and let all of that hurt out. And I guarantee you, grab a pillow, scream into it, cry as hard as you can, because a few minutes later, you're going to feel like you can actually take a deep breath. You can actually breathe again, and you're gonna feel more peace, and it's just you need that reset. And that reset starts with crying. If you hold all of that hurt in, you're not gonna have space for healing. So the hurt has to come out in order to be able to heal.
And I will say for men, the same exact thing. But furthermore, make sure that you have a couple of these emotional breakdowns in front of your woman so that she can know that she's the support system for you. This is where that closer bond starts to happen because both of you are in survival mode. And if both of you know that you can be emotional together, then you know that we're going through this together. The last thing that you would want is for your significant other, your wife, your girlfriend, your baby mama, whatever it is, you don't want her to think that you don't have emotion in this because you cry when you're all by yourself and you don't show her that this is actually affecting you. I think it is a very big thing to have a couple of these breakdowns in front of your woman so she realizes that you do have a heart. And then at the same time, you give her an opportunity to be there for you.
What would you say? What piece of advice would you give to a mom that is grieving? Because
Oh,
the dads are
I
great.
know exactly, and I know exactly what is the most powerful thing that I ever told you. And I say this to so many people after any type of loss, and it is so powerful. For some reason, humans think that we owe sadness to situations. And then, even worse than that, it seems like if for any reason you aren't sad for long enough, or if you're not broken for a certain amount of time, or if you show happiness too soon, then maybe there's not enough care. Maybe
It's
you don't
perceived
love,
as.
it's perceived of this. Well, this is very easily fixed when you look into nature. What would happen if a female lioness would break down and end up going in a depressive hole because she saw a hyena or three hyenas eat one of her babies? This happens every single day. Unfortunate as it is, that mother knows that she has a couple other cubs, or if that was the last one, she knows that she has a job to do, which is to procreate, survive, and keep on creating more cubs. There's no depressive hole. There's no time for a depressive hole because that is a top predator. Humans, top predators. We have other things that have to get done to be able to be happy, to continue to survive, to be able to be successful and live out lives that are meaning. So if a female lion can continue doing everything that she can and be a great mother and a provider for the cubs after watching hyenas rip apart one of her children, then why is it that humans can't have the same exact ideology? Well, then some people say, yeah, but they're not as complex as we are, blah, blah, blah. No, we decided to make it more complex. Life is a blessing. Death is part of it. What is not normal is not being able to be happy after a loss. So my most important thing that I can give to anybody, not only a grieving mother, anybody that has had a loss, and even more so to the ones that are by themselves, the ones that aren't blessed to have a husband that cares, one that is there for you. My most powerful thing to say to anyone that is gone through a loss and is depressed, I give you permission to be happy. And that is the most powerful thing that I ever told you, because it must have been about 2 weeks after the death of Dex that we were in that gray area of,
Well, I
are
remember
we supposed
during
to
that
be?
time, I remember telling you that I didn't know if I was ever gonna laugh again. I remember that. was saying I don't feel like I could laugh.
You married the right guy now,
you
didn't
said,
you?
and you said you're gonna laugh when something is really funny, and you said, and it's okay, laugh. Don't feel like you have to hold back for me or for what other people think. If you feel like laughing, laugh. And then when it actually happened, I remember Davin said something funny, and I started laughing. And for a second, I caught myself, and I was like, "Oh wait, am I supposed to be laughing?" And then I remember what you said, and I was like, "Wait, I have the right to laugh. It's okay to be happy again. It's okay to feel happiness." And not that I was happy, but at least I was laughing because something was funny. And I just hearing you say, like, it's okay, go ahead. Like, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to have, giving, not permission necessarily, but just telling me that it was okay. It made a world of a difference. I think a lot of times when we're going through grief, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to create this podcast, is not something that is talked about. I feel like people expect the grieving parents to be completely broken forever. And the minute that they see you having, maybe going on a little trip or doing something or just smiling on a picture, they assume that you don't care.
Are these people really at the zoo 4 days after their kid died?
It's like, yeah. I need to get out of these four walls or I'm gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
So there you go. So that's actually
we give you permission to get out of the house. I give you permission to be happy, to laugh.
And now
how about even more interesting than this? I mean, nobody that has lost a child is ever gonna have this conversation with you. Here's the gold. What about sex?
That too.
What about sex? As crazy as that sounds, not one person has ever got on a podcast and said, after you lose a child, when do you guys end up having sex again? As soon as you can.
As soon as you
And
want
why?
To.
Because it will rekindle physical love.
And intimacy.
Intimacy and physical pleasure. You have felt like shit physically for how long? And out of nowhere, in a moment of a little bit of happiness, that hug turned into maybe maybe le pasaste la mano en la espalda and for some reason you were able to grab her butt. Whatever it is, figure out how to be intimate as soon as possible.
So that it doesn't get weird once you actually
exactly, because
intimate.
At the end, look at it this way. The faster that you end up being physical with the person that you love, hey, the faster that you'll end up being able, if that's your plan, to have another child and bring new life in, which isn't gonna take away the loss. Yeah. But man, it definitely keeps you entertained and knowing that you are blessed, that you have something new to bring happiness into your life. And I think that's what it is that happened when we had Dalen. We had a baby girl.
And I will say this before we get into that part, which is, it's important. I think it's very important to, when you go through grief and when you go through a loss, it's very important to make a decision. You don't have to make a decision of, I am going to heal in a healthy way. When you grieve, there's a fork in the road. You can either go to a very dark place, start asking, why did this happen? And how did God allow this? And all of these other things. Or you can say, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, but God hold my hand and help me and lean on him, and you will get through it. But you have to make that decision of not asking why, because why leads to a dark hole, because we're never gonna get an answer. Why did someone die in a car accident? Why did someone get killed? Why did the drunk driver hit him? Why? You're never gonna get an answer that is enough.
Do you remember why it is that I told you never to ask why? Remember I had told you? So
No.
in right when all of this happened, I was very aware that the question of why is imminent. It's human nature. You believe in a higher power. If you are a religious person, doesn't matter what your religion is, you believe in a higher power, that you're gonna be protected, that if I do X, Y, and Z, If I'm a good person, if I don't sin, whatever it is, I'm gonna live a good life. And then you're a good person, and out of nowhere, boom, you have this loss. It's very easy to question why. God, why are you gonna let this happen? And I remember I told you, please don't ever ask why it is that this happened, because the day that you get an answer, it's not gonna be enough. And from that point forward, you will never be happy again, because you will realize that your loss was not worth whatever the reason it was. Ask how. How am I going to get through this? How am I going to have the strength to be happy again? How will I find the tools to be able to return to either being myself again or even a better version of myself? And if you think that you can't be a better version of yourself, I'll tell you what, before the loss of my child, I was a bartender, I was a personal trainer, I was a DJ, I got into paramedic
Many
school.
moons ago.
I got into paramedic school, and then I was a nurse. When my child died, I realized that I could not monetarily deal with an emergency. So it woke me up as a man, as a father, as a provider. And I realized I have to do more for my family. And at that moment, for some reason, we were blessed with the idea of FLULESS, our mobile wellness company. And we opened this in the midst of this loss. We put our faith in God, and now we have an extremely successful business where we can be able to provide the life to our family that we want to and keep on living happy lives. And it doesn't matter what happens, we know that we'll be able to get through it, because unfortunately, we've been through probably one of the worst things that anybody can ever been through.
And that was...
Wait, I'm not done. And now it is our purpose to tell our story, to empower other people, to be able to try to get them a little bit closer, not only to God and to the light, but man, happiness is for you. I promise, we're here. This is real. We really lost a child. We're really talking about it. We're not broken about it. We do have moments of sadness, but it empowers us to let other people know that yes, there is happiness after death.
And some of the things that specifically worked for me during that time, aside from, seeing those little miracles from God, was, like Danny said, was going out and getting out of the house. Like being in the house, especially, a few weeks into it, a month into it, a month after the passing, when things start to get quiet during this time. That was in December of 2019. So right after that, it was COVID. Nobody was coming out of their house. So I was alone a lot of the time with Davin at home because schools were shut down. So something that worked for me was working out. And although it was a pandemic, I would still be able to come outside in our community, and I would walk. I would just walk with Davin. I would put him in a stroller and I would just walk outside, being outdoors. I mean, it was like January, February, Miami weather, which was great at the time. So being outdoors helped me a lot. It helped me just have more peace. And I will also say, like I said earlier, cry. Release all of that hurt. Give it a good hard cry if you need to. Whenever you feel like that knot in your throat, just go somewhere, cry by yourself, and allow that reset to happen. Another thing was, working out and being outdoors was kind of the same. I was just doing workouts at home, like watching YouTube or something, doing hard cries, and then also meditation. For me, it was just a way to just calm the chaos in my mind, but also feel more connected with God and feeling like somehow, I didn't know how, but somehow I was going to be okay. So that really worked for me. And to this day, I still do that practice. And during that meditation, the important thing is that you're facing what you're feeling. You don't run away from the hurt. face the hurt so that you can get through it. So you don't mask it with extracurriculars, you don't mask it with alcohol, you just face it head on, because the more that you try to not look at the hurt, the longer it's gonna last. But if you face it head on and you just face the hurt, and you're gonna get through it. It's at some point you're gonna face it, it's gonna hurt, you're gonna cry it hard, and you're gonna start to find moments of joy. So the main thing is, look for those moments of joy. I'm not saying happiness, I'm saying joy. Before happiness comes joy. And there's gonna be moments that are joyful. Doesn't mean that you're gonna find joy every single day, but there's gonna be things in different days that are gonna bring you joy, whether it's playing with, maybe if you have any children, any other kids, or just doing something that makes you feel joy every single day, even if it's something small, just a little something for you. Do something that you feel joy. And after you get used to, just acknowledge, let's say that you like reading. Well, sit down and read a book and be present in that moment of joy. And once you do that, then it's almost like retraining our hearts and our minds to start to feel joy and start to look for those moments of joy. And eventually, one day, you're gonna feel happiness. And that is okay. That's a great thing. In that moment, even if it's for 2 seconds, you're gonna feel happiness, and just give thanks to God. Enjoy that moment of happiness, and hopefully those moments of happiness keep happening more and more often. And the sadness is gonna, the crying is gonna go from crying all day, every day, to maybe every other day, every week, every 2 weeks, every month. And if that's not the case, then seek God and lean on Him, because I promise that happiness is possible. Thank you so much for being here with me today to tell our story. I still get choked up, but having you here made it that much easier to share our story. And I really hope that for anyone that is watching, I hope you can connect to our story. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments, and subscribe, because we're gonna have some great guests in the upcoming episodes with very unique stories. And if you know a mom that is grieving, that has lost any children, please forward this to them, so hopefully we're able to reach her and truly help her, let her know that there is hope and that there is happiness at the end of this whole chaos.
Same exact thing. I mean, I think it's amazing. Thank you so much for bringing me onto your podcast, Señorita Fabiana. To the guys out there, to the dads, even if it's a family member of yours, if you have a male figure that has been in my shoes, that has to be the one that is there to support his woman, make sure that he watches this as well. There's so many guys out there that are lost, that want to be able to do more for their wives, that don't know how it is to handle the situation, that don't have a positive reinforcement or somebody to look at that has been in their shoes to say, hey, try this, maybe this will work out. And if not, don't do it for yourself. Do it for your woman, man. As long as you're on the mission of trying to make your woman happy, that's going to end up making you happy too. Happy wife, happy life. Depressed wife, shitty life.
Not good for
that's
anyone.
For damn
not
sure.
Good for anyone.
It's not what we want for ourselves. It's not happy. So I'm extremely proud of you. I myself look forward to watching the other episodes to see the triumphant stories of women that have faced the worst thing possible and have been
even harder than ours.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear the story of more women winning after a loss, so that other women can also join them in the happiness that they're supposed to be in. So I really do think that it's a blessing what it is that you're doing for women. And I really hope that it gets pushed out to the masses so that you could fulfill your purpose of helping other women, because God has blessed you so that we can be in this point.
This is my gift. This podcast and this creating this community is a vision that I got from God. So this is my gift to Him for the miracle of healing me, because I don't think I was supposed to be healed. I don't think that I didn't feel like I was ever. I felt like I was going to be broken forever. So the fact that I was healed and I am happy as I am today is a miracle. So this is my gift to God. I'm saying thank you. So thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
Love you, honey.
And for anybody that's questioning, it's 2.5 weeks.
What? No.
They'll know.
No. Thank you, guys.